So we now know that coming in 3.7, we're going to be getting, amongst a bunch of little things, we're going to be getting an addition to crime gameplay. And I'm not talking about the interdiction ship. We've kind of gone over that, ad nauseum. So we're going to kind of look at something else, which is new gameplay for when you get that 5 crime stat rating, when you are absolutely at the top of the game. Now, for those of you who don't go that direction, you may not know this, but once you get to 5 crime stat, nobody wants to give you missions anymore, including the criminal underworld. They don't want to give you missions anymore. Those missions become unavailable, which in the beginning I thought was kind of weird. I was like, well, why shouldn't I be able to do the smuggling missions? But in a weird way, it kind of makes sense because, if you're trying to smuggle goods, part of your business is you want those goods to arrive at a location. And if someone's got too much heat on them, the police are watching them too closely, you probably don't want to rely on them to transport your very valuable and important cargo, right? Kind of a bad idea. You're hoping for a success, right? And so I understood it. Upon greater reflection, I understood what the point behind that was. So, whether intentional or not, I was like, okay, that makes sense. So fine. And so I never really made a video about it. It was something that kind of annoyed me, but I could understand a reason lore-wise why it wouldn't work. But now we found out that we're getting a new mission, which is something that pops up when you have that maximum crime stat rating, which is you get to fight the Navy. You get missions and you go out and you fight, the Imperial Navy, basically. And on the one hand, lore-wise, I kind of went, well, on that one really kind of doesn't make sense. Like a person sitting and floating in midair. That kind of, I don't know if I really, lore-wise, if we can really kind of reason that one out. But at the same time, I like what CIG's doing here. Not to knock them, I think that, adding content up at that end of the game is a good idea. And certainly it gives players more things to do. So I'm not opposed to it. I mean, for me, I thought, like the silly end of it was that, okay, so you go, you're already wanted by the police. You're a danger even to your pirate allies. And so you're going to go and attack like the Imperial Navy. I keep wanting to say the Federal Navy because like I've been playing a lot of Elite Dangerous lately. And you go and you're going to fight the Imperial Navy and what, draw more attention to yourself. I was like, lore-wise, that really wouldn't make sense. I mean, you'd probably at that point be labeled like a full-on terrorist or something, and you would bring even more heat down upon yourself and make the situation even worse. But I like the idea that CIG is trying to add content at that end of the game, so I was like, soft pass. In the future, I would like to, I don't know, I would like to maybe see when things are further developed, when things are further down the line and we know what's going on, I would like to see that go to a place where maybe you make contact with, different resistance forces. If there's an empire, then clearly there's a reason to, there's going to be some kind of subversive counter-empire movement, and maybe you can work with them, and maybe there's missions you can do through them, certain things that you can unlock, cool shit like that. That would be very interesting. I would like to see that side of the universe, not strictly the criminal side, but also maybe like a rebellious side, a rebellion against this Star Empire, if you will. That would be very interesting to see how they developed a story like that. Give the writers a little bit of free reign and just say, hey, what if there was a resistance movement? What would that look like and who would be involved? That sort of thing would be really, really cool. And so in the future, when things are more developed and we can kind of go beyond this, I would like to see that. There's little hints of it in the game already. Like when you go to Hurston, some of the missions to go clear out the bunkers are like, go get these squatters out of here. They're in our Hurston facilities. Whereas other missions they say, oh, these Hurston cops think they're so bad, go kick them all out of here. And you go in and it's like Hurston security dudes in there. And I would like to see that developed more. I think that would be a much broader palette for the writers to work from. Something really interesting. I would love to see where that went, because there may be people out there who, for their own reasons, whatever their sensibilities are, as a player, they may not want to be a straight up space pirate, but maybe they see themselves as a resistance fighter against the injustices of the Empire. And obviously, there's always a certain amount of injustice in any society, and maybe these are people who have taken up arms in that cause. That would be a really interesting kind of storytelling area. I hope that this is where that kind of goes, where it leads to. Its implementation now as giving people something to do, fantastic, great. Even though it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, I agree with it from a basic functionality point of view, just giving players more things to do, more places to go, even if it's within the confines of what we already have in the game already. But in the future, if you could take that to that kind of a place, that would be really cool. One of the things, when you look at the idea of fighting the Federal Navy, one of the things that you'll run into is obviously the Federal Navy is always going to have the trump card, so to speak, in terms of arms and equipment by a long shot. I mean, they've got destroyers, they've got frigates, they've got corvettes, all of that stuff. They've got all kinds of firepower. And even if you're, say, a pirate who has a hammerhead or a Polaris or an Idris or even a javelin, you're always going to be outnumbered and outgunned. And I think that could really kind of create a certain amount of fun. One of the things I always liked about Star Wars, especially in The Empire Strikes Back, when they showed the Rebel fleet at the very end, drifting through space and, setting up their next move, is none of their ships were as organized and as uniform as the Imperial ones. That was something that I always really, really loved. And to a certain degree, I was kind of a little bit disappointed when they got those big Mon Calamari ships in Return of the Jedi. I kind of felt like I liked the Rebel fleet better as this kind of haphazard gang of ships. And I think that would be an interesting way to go. I mean, if, the UEE has this, this ridiculous advantage in terms of equipment and arms, and if there was some kind of a resistance or a rebel movement within the UEE, that sprang up for any number of, you can come up with any number of valid political reasons if they, if they did spring up, if it was this collection, like this ragtag collection of, just whatever they could get their hands on rather than just straight up military ships. I think that would be a really interesting idea to explore. And it was sort of just seeing this that kind of gave, the genesis to that idea. And I was like, man, that would be really cool if we had something like that. Like, I don't know. I would want to see what shape it would take, but I could even be talked into setting aside piracy as just for kicks and going into piracy for a purpose. That would be very, very interesting. It's like, oh, we got to get more supplies. Well, let's steal them from the UEE Navy. That would be really interesting. Like taking down a UEE Navy convoy not through just strength of arms, but through being smart and being, setting up a really good plan as to how to handle every eventuality. That sort of thing, sort of more akin to the way you would picture the Rebel Alliance working in Star Wars. I don't know. It was just like seeing that. It kind of set me down that track, and I thought, man, that would be a really good idea. And I think that you could come up with some really cool characters and some really compelling storylines that maybe make you ask a few questions along the way about sort of like the limits of power, the abuse of power, and how much is too far and that sort of thing. I think that would be a very interesting area of the Star Citizen universe to play in. if we get to explore that direction. I think that you could tell some really interesting stories in that area. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyways, that's the show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.